Are we in America intentionally breaking our public health institutions? We've confirmed an anti-vaxxer to head the Department of Health and Human Services. We're cutting funding for research and public health initiatives. I'm Amy McGrath. I'm here with my co-host and friend, Denver Riggleman, and this is Truth in the Barrel, Devil's Cut edition, where we do a deep dive into one important topic.
And I am so excited about this topic today. And I hope people understand how committed we are, Amy, because I'm doing this from Dubai, as you can see with the skyline behind me and my nice, brightly colored shirt. But with this incredible content like Devil's Cut and everything that we're doing, people have to sign up. So you have to get on our podcast. You got to download it wherever your favorite podcast station is. You have to subscribe on YouTube, be there or be square. And make sure you follow us on all our socials. I mean, we're everywhere, aren't we, Amy? We're even on Truth Social. We're brave. We don't care. We're here to, push facts and truth. The TIB, baby. That's where we're at. And that's why I'm doing it from Dubai, because it's that important to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Well, thank you, Denver, for being in Dubai and being with us. Since you're there, I'm going to be the one to talk a little bit about whiskey today. And I'm bringing this one to everyone's attention. This is called American Honey. It's part of Wild Turkey bourbon here in Kentucky. And the reason I love it, and for those people who are sort of whiskey bourbon snobs, they may look at things like American Honey, which is basically infused honey into bourbon. They might look at that and say, well, that's not real whiskey. You know what? This is great for people who may not love whiskey. Maybe you have a partner or a spouse who doesn't love whiskey. I'll tell you what, go buy them a bottle of this, because it's one of these things where it's really sweet. They'll probably like it. They can sip on it and enjoy some whiskey with you. And so I loved it. This was, for me, a way to kind of get back into sipping and drinking whiskey again. So American Honey, check it out.
We have a history with the American Honey whiskey. So my wife actually tried a bunch of the honey whiskeys, and she's a whiskey drinker, as you know, Amy. She likes the hard stuff. But I dared her to make a honey that was actually real with real whiskey. And so she made Blackback Honey Rye, which won best whiskey, best blended, or I think some category like that, the New Orleans Bourbon Festival. Beat that incredible whiskey you have pretty badly, beat it really badly. But I will tell you, it was because of those whiskeys that gave us the inspiration to go with our Blackback Honey Rye. And it really is a gateway whiskey. And what Amy's talking about, if you're going to do the hard stuff, like if you're like a hard druggie, you want to start with marijuana first, right? So our honey rye whiskey is sort of like a gateway whiskey too. But what Amy has is a gateway whiskey. So everybody should go out there. If you want to go to the hard stuff, the good stuff, start with the honey stuff. And I promise you will graduate to better and better whiskeys.
It tastes really good. It tastes really good. For those people that don't love whiskey, just try it. Have your spouse partner try it. Trust me.
That's right.
All right.
And party.
Let's get to it, Denver. Donald Trump and his administration has promised to make America healthy again. And they're doing so by appointing unqualified leaders, cutting the health and human services budget, and embracing junk science. So let's just give a quick overview to our viewers as to what's going on. The first piece of this is putting unqualified people in these positions of leadership of public health in our country, starting first and foremost with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as, I know you're laughing, Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I know that lots of people may have read a lot about him, but you know what you all should do that are listening? Go to Wikipedia and look at the Wikipedia page for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It will blow your mind. This is a very scary appointee. He's not a doctor. He's never been in government. He's a politician, a conspiracy theorist, and an anti-vaxxer. That's just a start.
Just to start. And Amy, you know how I am, right? We're both doing the show based on what we've seen. We can go back to conspiracy theories. The fact that I've been looking at this since 2004, belief systems that overwhelm people's sort of rational way of thinking. He is that. We make these jokes, right? Oh, there's people who believe that 5G cell signals cause ear leakage. Oh, they're so stupid. That's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He
Yeah.
believes that, guys. As far as anti-vax, think about what he says about measles, the fact that we should be doing about vitamin D. I don't even have the words. There's so many layers of crazy. I think everybody should follow Amy's advice and go look at all his belief systems, what he's done, what he's been responsible for. But now we have this person making policy, Amy. We have
Yeah.
this person directing cuts. We have this person injecting his thoughts, no pun intended, injecting his
Yeah.
thoughts right into the policy of the actual budget process, which everybody should go see our show on the budget process so they know how it works through approach. The president's budget is based on inputs from his cabinet and those he's appointed, and one of those is RFK Jr. It's insane to have
And
superstition actually ruling the day right now in the
and
American
he's
government.
not the only one, Denver. He's not. You might say,
Oh
well,
no.
he's just an anomaly. I'm sure the leaders of all these other the Center for Disease Control, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. These people are good, right? No, Doctor Mehmet Oz is now in charge of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid. This is a guy who peddled unproven and dangerous cures for profit. The deputy HHS secretary, a guy by the name of Jim O'Neill, he has said that, he wants healthcare to be run as a free market. Okay. And meanwhile, the Trump administration has pushed out the nation's top vaccine regulator, who was responsible for helping to develop the coronavirus vaccine very, very quickly, pushing out these people and putting in these really unqualified crazies. That's number one.
Well, it's, we have this Make America Great Again. This is mobbable. This is a Make America Bleed with Leeches again. And when you look at all the superstitions and all the people that are in charge and who's been let go, and you talk about somebody who took her 6 years to get a degree from American University in the Caribbean and had to make up where she got her medical degree. You have Dr. Oz. And by the way, Amy, I mean, I think we really need to do something about Oprah Winfrey and who she introduces to actually the public. Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, just really disappointing. And then, right, and then if you go up, I have this theory, Amy. It's the little Stalins. The ones underneath the specific leader are usually worse because they're trying to please their leader. They're trying to please that person for upward mobility, their own cynicism, their own, true belief, their own fantasist ways of life. Amy, what you just said, there is layered idiocy that's directing and coordinating policy for healthcare agencies nationwide. And we are going to be worse than third world countries as far as healthcare. It is hard to believe that right now we don't even know what the reaction is to bird flu, which is starting to jump to human beings right now, or what we're supposed to do. We don't even have a policy about how to really tackle measles based on the fact that people don't believe in inoculations or vaccinations anymore. And think about this. There was a family, Amy, who had 5 or 6 kids. People need to look this up. One of their children died from measles, and they were still okay, right? That they said that's just the way it is, and it's because of their religious beliefs. I'm gobsmacked. I don't know how to get in front of this superstition tidal wave that's hitting us, Amy. I just don't.
Well, two things. One, I want to talk briefly about measles because that you just brought that up, and that's super important. But then I want to get to the cuts that are going on right now to public health services. So the measles outbreak, people should know. You probably read about it in the news. We had right now 935 cases in 2025. We've had 2 deaths from measles. And to give you some context for this, last year, we only had 280 cases total in the United States of America for all of 2024. And we already have a measles vaccine, by the way, Denver. We've had one since 1963. So you can be vaccinated against this disease.
Unbelievable.
It was a very contagious disease and deadly before it killed thousands of children every year before 1963. And so what's happening? We have RFK Jr. as the HHS secretary. He has delayed communicating to people in America about the vaccine. He hasn't said much about it. His messages have been mixed. He said at one point that the vaccine is effective and then turns around and says, well, it's not really all that tested very well. And that has an impact. It has an impact on the American population, right? When your HHS secretary isn't fully behind the vaccine, a lot of people don't want to get it. He hasn't enlisted the American Academy of Pediatrics in trying to fight this disease right now. It's and where is this disease breaking out? And guess what? In places that have the lowest vaccine rate. So that's what's going on with measles at the moment.
There's a scientific term, that I like to use for people that can't seem to grasp science. They can't seem to grasp facts. They seem to cling to superstition. And I think if you look in, I think there's a psychology manual. What is it? The DSM-5 TR, I believe. In the DSM,
I have no idea.
In the DSM, it's called a fucking idiot. And I think that's the issue that we have right now is that with the DSM defining these type of individuals, we are going backwards in time.
People need to know that there are massive cuts going on right now to our public health institutions. The Trump Republicans are planning on cutting the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health. They've already cut research, cancer research out of places like Johns Hopkins. $33 billion is being cut from the HHS budget. And that's going to have huge implications. And it's not just like money, folks. They're cutting programs for young researchers to come work on becoming the PhDs that we need for the future to tackle some of these diseases. Trump has issued an executive order to withdraw from the World Health Organization, which has been, it's not perfect, but it has been super important in fighting diseases around the world. We've decimated the Center for Disease Control's Worker Safety Center, the National Institute for Occupational Safety. I mean, all of these things are happening right now, and it's going to have long-term implications. But that's also why we're bringing in this important guest to talk about this.
Yeah, you know what? Me and you don't want people to die because of stupidity, Amy. That's why we're doing this show. We want people to be facts-based and truth-based. That's why we're doing Truth in the Barrel. That's why I'm excited about this guest. That's why I'm honored to do this show. Is because of topics like this. And I am, yes, we can try to make light of some of this, but I don't think, listen, if we're not laughing, we're crying about what's happening right now in this country. And again, that's why I'm excited about the guest, and I'm ready to get to it, Amy.
So I think with the craziness that's going on, I've had the benefit of knowing someone really well whose story I think is an inspiration, but one who will give us a reminder of the value of science and the positive role that government can play in saving lives. And I think that's really important right now. In 1951, Marianne was 10 years old, living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the oldest of 8 children. And she contracted polio. She spent a year in the hospital and in a children's home, a home what they called for crippled children, where she was trying to recuperate, but she survived. She left with a paralyzed leg, but was happy to have survived. During her time in the hospital and in her time in that home in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, recovering, Marianne was part of the historic scientific research program that developed the polio vaccine at the University of Pittsburgh under Dr. Salk. And many years later, Marianne went on to become a doctor herself, being one of the first women to graduate from the University of Kentucky's medical school in the 1960s. And Denver, she happens to also be my mother.
I am so excited about this guest. I think it's the best guest we've had, Amy. I really do. And when you sent me what your mother had done, I'm going to say a couple things. And it's not to flatter you. It's not to, just to come off the top rope with exuberant types of praise. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think there's a toughness to your mom reading about her going through polio, the berries that you broke. I'm excited about this interview, especially when I saw that was your mom. With the incredible background that she has. I'm really excited about this.
Well, let's bring her in.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Hey,
So
so
it's
I'm really.
embarrassing.
Oh, my
Well.
gosh. I didn't mean to embarrass you, Marianne. I'm just excited to meet you.
Well, so
Yeah.
I'm really super proud and excited to have join us to talk about her story today and its connection to public health. This is my mom, Dr. Marianne McGrath. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Aim. Hi, Denver.
Hi, Dr. McGrath. It's great to meet you.
Oh, please call me Marianne. Everybody does at this point.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I tell you what, listening to all that reminds me how old I am.
Oh, gosh. Well,
But
I just wanted to tell you really quickly, and Amy, Amy and I now have known each other a good while, and looking at Amy's past, what she's done, the barriers that she's broken, her toughness, her ability to lean forward. To know somebody like Amy is an honor. Then, again, I don't want to embarrass you. I'm not trying to overdo this, but looking at what you went through to become a doctor, your knowledge of the healthcare system, but it's really about your toughness, right? And your ability to push through things that other people, I think, would find virtually impossible. So again, I was more excited about this interview than I've seen in any guest. And I don't think there's going to be one better because you're also Amy's mom. And the way I feel about Amy and how awesome she is, I can see where she got a lot of her traits, Marianne. So that's why I was so excited to meet you and to talk about this topic. And I know Amy and you have probably talked about this before, but that's why I was excited. So Marianne, I apologize for embarrassing you. I don't want to, but I mean what I say. And it's just what an honor to meet you.
thanks. I really appreciate that, Denver. Um, you know, Aim and I have talked a lot about the current administration and its foibles and its disasters. And healthcare is one area around which I feel very strongly for lots and lots of reasons, of course. But oh my goodness, oh my goodness.
Well,
Um,
let me just start, Mom, because I get the benefit of talking to you every day, and so I hear things from you. Obviously, I know your story really well, and I told a little bit of it to our listeners. But you not only have the life experience of understanding how important vaccines are, but you also then became a doctor and spent your life um, helping people, and with your scientific knowledge and all that you've learned. I guess I'd first start out to ask you, when I was growing up, we didn't seem to have the pushback to vaccines, at least in my opinion, when I was younger. And now all of a sudden, I feel like, maybe it's not all of a sudden, but I feel like there's more of a pushback. And I'm wondering, why do you think that is?
oh, gee, why don't you give me a tough question?
We always ask the easy questions on here, Marianne. They're very
Well,
simple.
I think that your memory is accurate, Amy. Um, in looking at what is, oh dear God, almost a century of life experience, but only some of it truly being able to integrate what I was seeing and experiencing. And really, I would say only the past half century being able to understand it a little bit better. But we lived in such a very different time when I was a kid and when I became a mother and had my children. Um, uh, it was simply a different world. You can't imagine, um, nor can anybody, I think, who's been born in the last 50 years, imagine a United States of America without any health care of note. When I was a kid, um, uh, growing up, the whole concept of disease, which it was still struggling with the idea that diseases, and by the way, at that point, in the turn of the century and so on, the biggest killer of human beings in this country and nationwide and worldwide was infectious disease. And yet at that time, we were still trying to understand what was infecting things. And so it evolved what was at that time called a germ theory, but we really didn't understand anything about the germs. We didn't know that there were different kinds of germs, bacteria, viruses, and that they acted very differently. They were found in different places. They were of different virulencies. All those kinds of things were totally unknown. And at the time when plagues, for example, killed hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, um, we knew that something was afoot or going around, but we really didn't understand it. And if you don't understand its beginnings and its cause, you certainly don't have any uh, leverage to stop it or treat it really in anything but the most superficial ways. So, um, when
So
we
I
were,
feel like we've gone backwards though. Like
I think,
we're
I
supposed
think
to
in
know
many
more
ways,
right now, right?
I think in many ways we have gone backwards. Think about when when I got polio, for example. I was 10 years old at that time. At the 1950, okay. Um, in those days, um, that was the dreaded disease of the time. Why? Because it struck people. Oh, dear God, it struck children, but it struck adults too. And when it did, you were, if you lived, you were still out of commission most of the time. I mean, you really were. Men who had families to support, women who had homes to take care of, they couldn't go back to doing that. They had to be cared for. And so, it really wreaked havoc. And we didn't know what caused it. And so people developed all kinds of phobias. For example, that year, my brother and I, who used to walk to a pool, public pool, swimming pool that was about a mile and a half, 2 miles away, they closed the swimming pool because they didn't know that that might not be the place that the polio germ resided. Um,
Mhm.
but in those days, um, I mean, it was kind of like the closest thing we've had is the worst of cities during the coronavirus.
Mhm.
Okay. And even at that, rural areas that didn't see as much infection and didn't see the death did not develop the same kind of fear that, for example, New York City and residents around developed of this terrible virus. During the AIDS epidemic, um, cities in particular that had a high incidence of the development of AIDS, people were very frightened of what caused it. And at that time, we had knowledge of a virus, but um, we really didn't know what besides sex
Mhm.
could transmit this virus. And people wouldn't go near individuals who had AIDS. I mean, it really was a commitment for nurses and doctors and other personnel to take care of AIDS patients. And they had all this garb on and so on. It was as frightening as the disease itself in some ways.
But
But
mom, we know so much more now in with technology and scientific discovery, but it's almost like so many people don't want to believe science now.
you
Agree?
would like to have a simple answer as to why there's so much resistance now. I could give you a simple answer, but probably wouldn't be politically correct.
Well,
I
send
want the
it. This is
simple,
this is
please.
this is the show to say it.
Marianne, could you believe not politically correct, please,
Well,
very quickly? I would
we're
love to
living
hear
in an
that.
area of disbelief, and we're living at a time when people resist. People don't know the truth because the truth is rarely spoken. I think you all are an exception. And this is one of the reasons why I have so enjoyed your podcast. But the fact of the matter is, people have had doubt sown about otherwise revered institutions, including science, including medicine. And as a result, fear again, it creeps in as in disguise, I think, and shows itself today often as the need to assert one's own opinion and to do what I darn well please, regardless. Don't tell me what to do. And in this country, I think that that is the prevailing sentiment. Um, I don't mean to be, yeah, I guess I do.
You mean it.
But it really has. And over the last decade, that certainly has been capitalized on by our current administration. That, I mean, please drink bleach to cure COVID. Oh, come on, you know? And, we see it every day. And we see it in the news. The reason
So
why people push back. Why? Because we're kicking out all the people who really know anything. We're putting down the institutions. And certainly every time we say something like that, or every time it comes out of Trump's mouth that this is going to be defunded, and this is going to be sued, and this is going to be stopped, our appreciation of the value of things like education and things like science and things like the progress that we've made in so many areas that rely on those things, it just, it throws our trust into chaos.
So, Marianne, how do you feel then? The biggest fear, is superstition, sort of winning back over science. And, when you talked about swimming pools, right, closing the swimming pools because they weren't sure how polio was transmitted, it has to shock you with your background, your experience. By the way, I'm the oldest of eight also, so I get it, right? Incredible.
Yeah.
Um, just to let you know, what did you think about, I was looking at the funding lines and, research and development, experimentation is what creates these scientific breakthroughs to save lives. It's incredible to have science in our lives. So when you see massive cuts to health and human services, HHS, but also the NIH, when you see the massive billions of dollars that are being removed from these programs, it's got to just give you chills down your spine to know that we might be going back to more of an era of superstition because we have an HHS secretary that believes that cell signals cause ear leakage. And I think that's not a great thing, right? It's like not going to the swimming pools. If you have ear leakage, you're not going to want to use a cell phone. That's probably not what's causing it. You probably have a real medical condition. So, what is your thought, really, Marianne, on the lack of funding that's happening with HHS and NIH, and where we're going? Because I think with your background, I think you probably you can actually speak to this better than just about anyone.
Well, I have to say, Denver, that it makes me cry. Literally, it makes me cry for two reasons. One is the practical knowledge that nothing that happens today as a breakthrough happened today. It happened over the past X number of years. And reaching a point of scientific breakthrough in any area always has foundational science behind it. And it has taken many people in many locations years to get to that point. And that was also true of the polio vaccine, but we didn't hear as much about it because people were so focused on the relief that they experienced when it came available to them. But today, those same things are taking years. We've stopped not just the today, but taking that money away from the primary source of funding of the research has stopped everything in the pipeline. So not only today's findings, which could be earth-shaking, just as earth-shaking as the polio vaccine, but in other areas, are not the only things that have been stopped. All of the research. And to go back to it in the same way even a year from now, if that funding is truly stopped, is going to be extremely difficult because you have to make up the things that you've missed in this time, and you may not have the same people to do it, which means a whole new group of people have to be available in order for us to get there. Where are they going where they're not going to stay here? I mean, scientists are already being recruited, highly recruited by other countries because they've got the funding for the research. And make no mistake, they will have today's findings, not us, just a by the by. But I have to say that the other thing about all this that makes me cry, I believe that as a country who has in the past recognized the importance of science and developing things that can help humanity, and we have been recognized, and we have held that place, I think, within world observation, gives us an obligation to do something about that. I think that we as human beings have an obligation to help other human beings wherever we can. How can we not? How can we look at poverty everywhere? How can we look at illness? How can we look at suffering and war and not want to intervene in a positive way to stop it? I think that's, that's a moral stance, I guess. But I believe that that's where we do as human beings. And we have done exactly the opposite. And it has not just hurt us. I mean, it's hurt the world. Taking away USA Aid, the organization, which has been so significant in dealing with disease worldwide, is criminal, I have to say. It's a
Yeah.
war of its own, and we are the ones that waged it through Trump. It's just appalling, my opinion.
I hear this argument about public health and government. The argument is that, hey, we can do all this research through the private sector. We don't need public funds to do that. And you hear this, and in my pushback to that, and I would like to get your opinion on this. The private sector is for profit. And so they are going to do research into things that are going to make money eventually. But a lot of tackling diseases and trying to get ahead of some of the diseases here in the United States and around the world doesn't always, make profit for these companies. And so they don't do the research. And that's why public funding of these sorts of things is so important. I mean, just to be simplistic about it, we didn't have public research back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. We had to raise a bunch of money, as you said, in order to tackle a very real epidemic at that time that was killing people. Why do we not just invest in long-term public health and research so that we can kind of get ahead of things so that we don't get to the point where, it's an epidemic?
I think you've looked at that very wisely. And I have to say that, yes, a private organization was responsible for the funding of the polio research. But if you look at research and its impact on illness, for example, or wellness for that matter, the vast majority of the research necessary to achieve a today thing is what would be better characterized as basic research. Okay, it doesn't have an immediate cure impact, but it's a necessary step. And there were those steps necessary at the time of the development of the polio vaccine. By the way, if anybody is interested in reading about an excellent book that categorizes all that happened in order to develop the polio vaccine, was the Pulitzer Prize winning book entitled Polio by David Oshinsky. And it goes over all of this, but it looks basically at the reality that most of the research that eventually creates, for example, a medicine, or looks at the desired procedure that's going to be helpful, or for that matter, creates the perfect O-ring for the rocket. Those kinds of things don't come in one step. They come in many steps that consist of basic research. And no for-profit company is going to spend 60% of its research funds and time and talent on basic research toward that one thing, because a lot of times in basic research, you don't even know what the practical applications of that are going to be. So that's one reason. The other reason is, quite frankly, that we would narrow the scientific research that's done to such an extent that it would be really wasted time and energy for many things that otherwise would develop out of a scientific and I have to say, educational pursuit. Over the past 25, 30 years in particular, research has gravitated to this lovely marriage of funding source, the National Institutes of Health, and universities. And it makes a lot of sense for it to be there because the universities not only develop a lot of the basic research, but develop the talent that does the basic research and is a pipeline for us to provide people to do this in the future. That piece of university base is going to be moving out of the United States faster than you can blink an eye if we don't do something about this. Mm-hmm. And I'm very concerned about that. So I do think that it's at this point in time, the scope of the research necessary to continue to keep the United States in a number one position scientifically is so great that it really could not be handled by even a small coalition of private companies, drug companies, for example.
Yeah.
Well, Marianne, I usually get to end with a question, and I don't want to start with a really hard question like your daughter, as she tried to come up
Thank you, David.
So hard. It's just really, really concerned me. But I have this, Marianne, I have to say this. Listening to you, your background, your expertise, I always tell people that stupidity is terminal. But what you're saying too is that personal stupidity of people in charge is terminal for others now and long term. And you wonder about how many people are going to be affected long term. So I didn't want to end with an awful question, but with your knowledge, and if you're like Denver, how dare you? And then, Amy can, fire me off the show. But here's what I want to ask. Looking into the future, and when you're seeing the stupidity of this administration, a fantasist and conspiracy theorist is the HHS secretary. You see the funding cuts to NIH and HHS. You see the fact that we're going down this road regardless, right? And we have superstition, like you said, we probably shouldn't be ingesting or injecting bleach. Probably ivermectin wasn't the number one cure for COVID, right? Or hydroxychloroquine, right? So here it is. Are we ready? Amy, please don't be mad at me. Here we go. We ready? What do you think as an illness class or something that you see with your vast knowledge of illnesses and what you went through? Is there a specific illness or a type of illness that scares you in the future? And I know this is an awful question to end on, but is there an illness or type of illness that scares you that in the future that you think this funding cut could really harm children or harm people going forward?
Wow. Oh, thanks for the not hard question, Denver.
I wanted to ask a simple one to end it.
I have to say, I think your observation about stupidity was probably the best one I could think of.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, that's stupid. Well, that's interesting. You say it. You know what? That's why you're brilliant. Here's the illness and serious thing about stupidity, right? When we're looking at continuing to go after, the class of what bird flus, right, that we see starting to pop up. And you see, right, the fact that we're looking at measles exploding
Right.
again, right, based on the fact that we don't believe in any type of, I guess, inoculation for measles now for some reason. I think it's just vitamin D and maybe you rub baby oil on yourself to stop measles. But I think stupidity might be the thing that scares me the most, Marianne, is that if we don't have people that are based in science and they're based in a way of scientific theory, how to do experimentation, looking into the future, the funding to be able to do that without looking over your shoulder at crazies that are actually creating fantasy-based policy, it scares me that as we go forward, that we're having more and more people, instead of being like you and like Amy, right? That you're pushing forward. You do incredible things in the educational system. You're forward leaning. You do experimentation. You break barriers. We have people that are going to go back and rely on superstition and fantasy, and I see that in my own family. You're very impressive. And when you said the fact you said stupidity might be the one thing, I think you're right. You shocked me with the answer. It's dead on. Thank you. See, I told you it was easy, Amy. I told you your mom had
Well,
this.
I want
I
to
just
I
want to
want
let
to
you
end
know.
on a little bit of a lighter
Oh,
question.
ready.
What
I'm ready.
of all? I mean, because we've talked a lot of heavy stuff, and there's a lot to worry about right now. And you just talked about some of that, Denver. This conspiracy theories of people not believing in government, not believing in public health anymore. What, Mom? Of all of your many years, and I won't say how many, there's been many, many years of all of those, in your experience, what makes you hopeful right now?
You,
That is so sweet.
my my greatest gift in life has been my three children. I am incredibly blessed with three wonderful children. They make me hopeful. My seven grandchildren, they make me hopeful. Because in the midst of all that's going on, they still rise to the occasion. They still question. They still believe in what's good and holy and right. And they still are tolerant enough of other people to stay with their beliefs and recognize that forward movement is possible. That makes me hopeful.
I can't beat that, Amy.
Thank you, Mom.
Yeah, that's incredible,
You're welcome.
Mom.
That's
It's
a
amazing.
great way to end. What first of all, or lastly, I'm super honored that you are come on and be a part of this show. It's a lot of fun, and I love you.
I love you too. And I love you too, Denver. And
I love you too.
I appreciate both of you. I appreciate the truth that you tell and your
Oh
courage to
goodness.
do it.
Well, your kids make you hopeful, and grandkids. It's amazing. I would tell you, you make me hopeful, Marianne. That's all I got. I can't top what you just said about your incredible children and what you've done in your life. I'm out. That was too good. That was too
Thank
good.
you.
It was awesome
Yeah.
to meet you. What an honor,
Nice to meet you too. Thanks.
ma'am.
Thanks, Mom.
Love you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Dr. McGrath.
Well, Denver, that was amazing. Absolutely love bringing my mom on to share with the American public, because I've had the benefit of having her my whole life, and having her knowledge and understanding of this stuff. It's just super important right now with all that is going on, that we have people who are going to tell us the truth in terms of public health. So it was a great
Oh,
show.
so Amy, I'm so happy that your mom was on the show. It was incredible. Your mom, also a technical term I like to use about people that are that incredible, is badass. It's my scientific term. Your mom is certainly that. And let me
She
tell you
just
this,
likes Dr. McGrath.
Dr. McGrath, which for me, to be a doctor, incredible. And when she did it and to break those barriers. But I'll tell you this, if you want to hear from more incredible people like Amy's mom, you have to make sure that you download us on your favorite podcast. You have to subscribe to YouTube. You have to follow us on our socials. which is everything, right, Amy? We got Blue Sky, we got X, we even are on True Social. Amy, you're killing it on Instagram. We're doing that. I mean, we're everywhere. So people need to download us and need to follow us, because if you want to get content like the incredible stuff you just heard, make sure you sign up for Truth in the Barrel. Thank you, Amy, for this incredible day.
Awesome. See you next time, Dan.
See you next time.